we pass our lives between living history and interpreting it. In interpreting it, we live it. Each of our acts is a sign. The history we live is a document, and in this document of our visible history, we should read the changes and metamorphoses of our invisible history. The reading is a decipherment, a translation of a translation. We shall never read the original. Each version is provisional. The text changes incessantly, though perhaps it always says the same thing. And so, from time to time, certain versions are discarded in favor of others that in turn had been discarded earlier. Each translation is a creation, a new text. Octavio Paz. Welcome to Expeditions, a podcast about Lewis and Clark. You'll hopefully hear that from me a lot going forward. But why about? And what is this? This is a history project that I've been thinking about for roughly 5 years, which is the length of time I envision it'll take for me to complete this project, this ramble through my mind. As it's still being written, it's hard for me to know just how everything is going to turn out. But to make it easier on all of us, I've created a roadmap with mile markers to serve as chapters between thoughts and ideas. This is its own mile marker, the introduction, the preface, the preamble, the mission statement, all rolled into one. After that, there are mile markers of varying length, from one episode, like this one, to an average at this point of roughly about 15. This year, 2023, we'll see fated journeys and debate so-called inevitabilities. We'll look at the French and Indian Wars and Spanish Louisiana. But in mile marker 4, there's actually a nearly 50,000-word history of Lewis and Clark, from their ancestry to June 19th, 1803. So, this is a Lewis and Clark podcast, in quotes. I see 3 layers to this project. The first layer, May 14th, 2023, today, to May 14th, 2024, is the ambitious, if more slapdash layer. We're assembling a foundation for the future over the creature comforts of what'll soon be inside of this home. It's the I want to know more about phase of the show, and under the broad mile markers will hopefully allow us to tweak our compasses toward the pathways that we want to explore. A major component of the show's DNA is supplementing what we've learned, to correct, to deepen our understanding. This is not an AI writing this show. When connections are made, or people or places are written into the narrative, it's not only to enrich the story, but it's also a way marker for me to come back to for a future look. By the time that we depart Wood River next year, I want us to have a good understanding of how Lewis and Clark and all the men got there. The second layer is probably the more obvious. It'll concern the expedition itself, from May 14th, 2024 to September 23rd, 2026. While I wouldn't call it less ambitious, especially in the ways that I want to tell the story, it'll be more focused and be the walls to go with our framework. It won't, however, be a day-by-day reading of the journal, though it won't not be based on certain events. How could I help myself? And Gary Moulton's editing of the journals will be the layer's backbone. I'm sure I'm not alone in feeling that so much of the journey is in the journals themselves, and there are so many striking moments to explore. It'll be a chance to dive into the 2 preoccupations of these journals, the natural world and Native America. There are so many amazing scholars of Lewis and Clark, of the West, of America in this time period that I've read and have been thinking about for years, and I'm looking forward to synthesizing them in creative ways. I have big plans for how we'll see the Great Portage around the Great Falls of the Missouri, and how we'll travel down the Columbia or follow Clark up the Yellowstone, but for now, they're going to remain those scenes of visionary enchantment, as Lewis wrote, but only in my mind. If less sweeping than Layer 1, the wider world won't be forgotten, and its context is going to build upon our story. The world didn't stop when Lewis and Clark headed west. The world also didn't stop when Lewis and Clark returned from the West, and neither will we. We'll follow Lewis and Clark as they head east, through the world we'll have gotten very familiar with this year, and look at how their world has changed, and would continue to change, into our very own time. Think of this as the decorations of the home, the photos of our adventures, and all the people that we'll have met along the way. We'll return Sheheka, go too deep on Lewis's demise, Clark's career. We'll publish the journals and explore the fate of the Corps, as Larry Morris wrote. From York and Sacagawea to the Engagés, the French river boatmen plying the Missouri, to Drouillard in the far west, to Willard and Patrick Gass outliving most everyone else. Gass at nearly 100 years old when he died, after the Civil War. Both dying across a country they were part of opening, in California and West Virginia, respectively. And from there, I suppose we'll go to Layer 4, our final half year, to end off the show on May 14th, 2028. We'll explore Lewis and Clark's influence, their relative obscurity until the end of the 18th century, the 1905 Centennial Exposition in Portland, the creation of the Lewis and Clark Trail, to our very moment. Is this our estate planning phase in the metaphor? I think I've lost the thread here. That being said, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. My major goal here is to produce an episode a day, with the 7 episodes a week being roughly about an hour in length. As I said, mile markers will vary in length from one episode, such as mile marker 1 that you're in, mile marker 5 coming up are prime examples, to mile markers with over 50 episodes, such as mile marker 22 in the future. We have a Patreon, of course, but instead of putting out episodes early, as that means nothing in this format, I plan on releasing all of the mile markers at one time in some kind of zip file that I hope will expand with art and photos, scripts and annotations, etc. How this will compound as we go further in time, we'll just have to play it by ear. Supplementals would be Patreon exclusive, along with the other goodies as we grow. Access, videos, merch, whatever lay beyond the horizon. If anyone has listened to any podcast that I've done, then you'll know my social media ethos. Intermittent. That won't change completely, but your Twitters and Instagrams will be a good place to go, as will an email subscription when that evolves. You'll hear about the episodes one way or the other, and inside of each one of the shows, you'll be updated as we go, so don't worry about missing anything. The idea in the end is to work ahead. Read ahead, write ahead, record ahead. The further I can get ahead, the more that I can put out. I'm not going to pretend a day won't be missed or something won't happen, but I want to make it up for everywhere it'll count. Why? At its most basic idea, I've been podcasting for years, for fun. I've been talking about Bob Dylan and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I had an idea for this one day years ago, 6 years ago, in between the start of those projects. It's a writing exercise and a chance for me to get to know myself a little bit better, as well as to put my feet to the fire. I've lived and I've traveled and I've spent so much time in the last decade of my life in the places that Lewis and Clark have happened to cross through, from Kansas to South Dakota, where I was born, to Virginia, where I grew up and where I'm recording this particular outdoors episode that will not be normal to the show, to Portland, where I call home. It's also a challenge toward a change in my own life, to be more open, to engage more. I've been in a self-imposed exile for some time, and I don't think that I'm alone. There's a great quote in our next episode from John Ledyard where he writes, quote, "I see a great deal, and I think a great deal, but derive little pleasure from either, because I'm forced into both, and I'm alone in both." End quote. Force is a funny thing. As I've grown older, you start to realize how much power you have over your own lonesomeness and loneliness and striking a balance right between the two. I hope to find people who feel the same way as I do, that the world can be better, that this country can be better, that the natural world is something worth fighting for, and that it's not just our own ways of thought that might need adjusting, but how we see the world and how the world reflects us, for good and ill. I want to be another dumb history podcast for you. So if you're listening to this in 2024 and we're sailing into the Missouri, or 2025, where we're nearly capsizing into it, or 2026 on the clear water with the Nez Perce, or 2027, you get the point. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow.